thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Jennifer Pikoos, who is the practice director for TurningPoint Human Resources, and we're chatting about just what's happening out there among many, many different HR initiatives, and really, not the fact that HR, should strive to get a seat at the table, but the reality that HR really should always have had a seat at the table from day one and be part of the strategic leadership team. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts around that, Jennifer.
Well, thank you, Ken, so much for having me today. And it really is a pleasure to be able to sit down with you and talk about these types of things that are going on today. So relative to this expression that probably every HR, either up-and-comer, current leader, prior leader has heard is this statement of HR needs to have a seat at the table. And what's interesting, as I've grown up in my HR career over the past 20 plus years, is you never really hear that statement for other types of executives in an organization. You don't walk into an organization and hear someone say, the VP of sales needs to have a seat at the table. Of course, the VP of sales, so the way I've looked at it, kind of throughout my career, and sometimes perhaps in a little bit of a almost like a naive way, but then really an influencer type of way, is to not say that HR needs to have a seat at the table. It's really it should be an assumed fact that an HR executive, particularly the HR leader, has a seat at this table, with all the other division heads, leaders, CEO, COO of the organization. It really should go without saying that that would be the case. Obviously, it's not always the case, as we've seen with other types of disconnects along the way. But if you're going into an organization as an HR leader, that should be an assumed fact. And if it's not, that should be something that the HR leader collaborates and works with, the CEO, the top leadership of an organization. And so, to establish relationships with the peers of an HR leader, other division heads, again, other VPs, those types of people, you really need to be in the room with them, whether that's now post-pandemic on a remote basis or in the office, which I think bodes well for this type of relationship building. But that's going to be the best place where an HR leader can really step in and start to meet the rest of their colleagues at an organization and to start building business case for the types of things that an HR leader needs to be focused on. Again, really just focusing on the fact that it doesn't really need to be a call out, that an HR leader needs to have a seat at the table. It should just be an obvious point at this point.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's one of those things where I think it's rare, but it really needs to be both top down as well as bottom up, right? The HR leader needs to go into the organization with the confidence and credibility and fairness and business acumen to say, hey, here's why I should be part of the executive team from day one. But also it comes from the tone at the top where the CEO, the board, the president, whoever he or she might be, they need to also say, HR is part of this executive leadership team. HR is going to be a part of our key, company-wide strategic decisions, regardless of what the initiative might be, because there's a people component to everything, whether it's purely numbers related or it's actually people related. HR should be part of that conversation.
Absolutely. I really couldn't agree more. And I think that as somebody new in HR comes into an organization, well, I shouldn't say somebody new to HR, somebody new to an organization as the head of HR, or even a layer or two down within the HR organization, to be able to go in and really speak with credibility, with business acumen, is very, very important. So especially if you're starting a new job, my last position that I held for a very large automotive company, I spent the first 6 months, going around and leaving my office and meeting with people around the organization, around the country, to just establish that HR is a partner. HR isn't there just to let somebody go or conduct an investigation or process payroll. I mean, these are all critical elements of being a good HR leader and an HR function. These are the foundation of the house that you're building, but ultimately the people of the organization, whether it's the CEO or whether it's an individual contributor, understands who HR is as a person themselves, and what they're there to do. And it really should be much more about building relationships, camaraderie, empathy, these types of things that sometimes don't always go with the term human resources, which is ironic. Our tagline is bringing the human back to human resources for Turning Point Human Resource Solutions. So it's something that's really critical, in my opinion, and particularly after the pandemic. You know, the pandemic really showed us what it meant to create connection and what it meant to not have that at your fingertips when you're not sitting in an office with a lot of other people. So I couldn't, I really can't emphasize enough how critical it is for the HR organization as a whole, not just the leader, to be really embedded in the business